I am not in Northern Ireland today. I got up nice and early, about 4 o'clock. No, that's not true. I set the alarm for 4 a.m, but I probably got up about half 4, 25 to 5 for a very early flight. But I was all ready, hit the road, and had plenty of time. And I made my way over to Glasgow to attend the International Play Association conference, which is a really exciting opportunity because this conference travels all across the globe. There are people from all across the globe that are here in attendance, and it's great that it's in the UK. So I had the opportunity to come. The whole purpose of me coming is not just for me to have a nice week away, although Glasgow is definitely a really beautiful city. It's also for me to learn and to bring that back into the classroom and to share that with everyone. So I thought, now I'm back and I'm twiddling my thumbs because I'm not sure what to do yet this evening, I'd look back over my notes and have a little reflection rather than writing up reams and reams that won't be shared with anyone, because at least then it gives me the basis to think about how I can use some of this learning as we move forward into the next academic year. So as I said, the day started very early. I was on the plane, it seemed quite busy. And as I got off the plane, I noticed that there was a few familiar faces and I bumped into Playboard staff. So that was really nice. And they welcomed me in, which was very kind. And we travelled to the conference together because I have to say, post-COVID, it can be a bit nerve-wracking going into big events on your own. So it was really nice to have some Northern Ireland team around. And it is really good that we all share and enjoy those opportunities together, because it's not just for the benefit of students but also for children and young people across the country, because all of this learning will be implemented in to what we do moving forward. So thank you very much to Playboard for your kindness this morning. And that did continue as I entered into the conference, because social media is very much my friend. And what that has brought to me is lots of different connections. So as I've come into the conference, I've seen faces new and more familiar from people that I would interact with quite frequently on Twitter and Facebook. So it was really good to actually talk to people and have a conversation. And something I'll say about being in a play space is that everyone is always really nice. It was a morning of thank yous and hellos and smiles and hugs, and there is something very special about the playwork sector that seems to bring people together. So instantly I was at ease, and the conference had done really well at identifying before safe places for those with neurodiversity, who maybe didn't want to be in the crowded spaces, who could go and get quiet time, who could enjoy a little bit of the conferences being streamed into a room. So there was lots of consideration. Our lanyards, I'm not sure where mine is, but my lanyard, it has what language I speak, what pronoun I use. So again, that was really useful for people feeling comfortable and feeling easy to feel introduced to new people. So at the start, instantly feeling good about where I was, and in that big environment. Post-COVID, I haven't really been to many conferences, so that was a really good feeling to instantly feel relaxed where I was. We went into the main auditorium where the keynote speaker was going to address the Glasgow conference. It began with a welcome from the president of IPA, who is from Australia. And instantly she again made us feel very comfortable, asking how many people had been to the conference before, and a lot of people stood up. This was my first time, and I hope I get to come again. It will depend on the location and where it is, but it was really good to see those people who are so committed to play and those new people coming forward. And Scotland is so ahead of the game with what they're doing in terms of play and education. So it was really good to be in Glasgow and to hear from those representatives as well. It was a really nice setup with the keynote address. So we had, I'm going to look at my notes, but we had Professor Philip Jaffe, and he's the Vice Chair of the UNCRC. And instead of him just talking at us, he was asked questions by a panel from a local primary school. And there were 6 children who had gathered questions from across the globe and across their school to ask him really provocative and important questions about what was important to them. And I have to say, he addressed those and responded so well back. Being aware that it's important to listen to the child's voice and to take into account what they're feeling and what they're saying. And at an international conference, what it does is it reminds you that sometimes we can be quite insular in our perspective and how we look at things. So it was really useful to think about the wider perspectives, to hear questions from children in India, from different countries. And something that actually really stuck with me was one of the questions was from children in New Delhi, and they were saying about the air pollution being so bad that they can't go outside for certain times of the day. And that's really quite scary. You know, we take for granted how fortunate we are in Northern Ireland with our green spaces. I know the sun's shining this week. I know we get a lot of rain. But it puts things into perspective in terms of sustainability and the impact of the environment, of us as humans on the environment, and how that impacts children's play. So that was a really interesting keynote address, and really good to see children listened to, responded to, and for all of those people in the room who are very much committed to play, considering and reflecting on what they can do moving forward in relation to that, from their position, from where they are, how will they carry that forward. So that was really useful. There were so many workshops to choose from. I was overwhelmed. I didn't really know what workshops to go to. But the first ones I wandered into the room, not quite sure where I was going, but they were actually the perfect starting block for me for the workshops, because I went in and listened to a play therapist from Scotland. She provided free case studies of children that she's worked with, and just the impact and the importance of how play has encouraged them to open up and feel more at ease moving forward. So for anyone considering being a play therapist, I know that there are some students who are considering that as an option. It was interesting to hear about that pathway, that 3 years of training to then go out and work with children, and to use those skills in hospitals and schools to support children to really appreciate and understand those big feelings that they're going through, and quite traumatic experiences, and the ways in which play can support that. So that was a good start. And I then listened to Nikki Everett, and she was talking about teenagers in hospital and introduced that presentation as the forgotten age. And I find that really interesting, because I think of our hospital system with children going in the teen years, either into the children's ward or into the adults ward if they're a bit older, where play isn't really considered. And it really made me reflect on how we need to think about holistic care, not just the medical model. If you've been working on your different units in relations to different models of care and disabilities and support, that's something to really reflect on. Is if we're going into very clinical settings and we're not feeling good about ourselves, how is that going to impact our health and our ability to get better? So I did find that really interesting, and it was a good point for me to start from, because they were both big challenging areas, and being someone who teaches safeguarding, that's something that I can bring back and maybe talk to students about in a bit more detail, and think about how play can be used in services and schools to support those children, and to think about our environments and how we take into consideration that whole holistic approach to the child. So they were my first two. Then we had coffee, which was very nice, and some cakes, and more chat and connections with people. And what's really exciting is that there's, as I said, people across the globe. So you're introducing yourself to people, you're encouraged to talk and to connect with people, and there's already a few projects that I'll be bringing back, I hope, with connections I've made today, where we can maybe connect as a student group, which is really positive. After the break, where did I go? I had 3 workshops on risky play, and that was educators and play workers and policymakers from Denmark, and the Danish approach. So real ahead of us in many ways in terms of how play is taken. And there was a video I watched of a child jumping from one roof to another roof, which even for me, who's really likes risky play, it's like that wouldn't happen in our settings. So it was a challenge to our perspective, and also a challenge to think about how policies can support children to have those opportunities. And an interesting question that was asked was, does the term risky play, does that actually hinder those opportunities? And someone talked about how we should maybe change the term to adventurous play rather than risky play. So I suppose that's a reflection point that I'm going to look at a little bit more as we move forward. So yeah, they were really good workshops. Had lunch, and again I was speaking to someone on my table, our table, someone from Hong Kong who had flown in this morning. So that was really exciting because we've got some projects with Hong Kong already. So hopefully we're going to exchange some communication over the next few times and maybe look at what ways that we can connect together. We also had someone from America at our table, and then there was myself from Northern Ireland and someone from Scotland. So a real wide debate over lunch about what we'd experienced, what we did, how play was important to us. So that was really good. After lunch, there were the final workshops. So it's really busy. I'm actually quite tired. I like to smile, but I've smiled a lot, and I'm maybe just I need a bit of quiet time now. But the last 3 presentations were, there was libraries in Hong Kong. So a charity that sounds quite similar to what Playboard would maybe do in Northern Ireland, a real advocate of play, who go in and they look at spaces, and one of the spaces they'd looked at was a library, and looking at how they could use play to encourage reading. And that was really interesting to see how the environment had been changed. So it had gone from quite primary coloured, how you would maybe, that sort of plastic vibe, everything's bright and a bit garish, to a more natural environment that was free flowing. And they did a lot of work around a book and putting in different play opportunities for children to learn a little bit more and explore those stories in a bit more detail, and encouraging parents to come in. So it was interesting to see how libraries at the other side of the world are used to encourage that reading and those conversations. So that was really interesting. And I think that's something that's really important that's come out from this for me, is that sometimes, again, we can look very inward. Even across the UK and Ireland, we look at our curriculum, we look at the way we do things, and having those conversations allow you to see that there's lots of different ways, not just one way. So I would really encourage you to do that, to talk to others, read more information, get to different events, and to have those conversations to maybe challenge the way that you're thinking. So that was workshop 6. Then workshop 7 was Lego, which obviously I had to go to because I love Lego. But that was about a program, what was it called? So it was a program on the power of play and the power of Lego, and using it with those children who are neurodivergent, looking at how you build a building club. And again, that's something I really want to explore, because it was a very specific program that was used to encourage the social skills and the intellectual skills in a play-based capacity. So we have loads of Lego at the college, and I want to have a look at that again in more detail, thinking about how could we maybe learn some skills to encourage our young people and our children to play intentionally, in a way that will support their development, and also for me, who's interested in project-based learning, you could hear about the different roles that children use in that club, and how it promotes collaboration, how it promotes sharing and considering other people. So I think that would be a really good project to look at. And then our final workshop of the day, and as I said, I think I counted it up, there was like 28 workshops you could go to, which was really hard to choose from. So this evening I'm going to sit down with the laptop and then look in a good lot more detail. But the final workshop was on the power of play in museums. So again, this really interested me. And the reason why I did choose the workshops I did is because they're not areas where I feel where I have much knowledge. I have some. I'm really interested in community, really interested in play, but I don't work in a museum, I don't work in a library, but they are really important part of our communities for supporting children's development. And they're also an important part of maybe students' futures as they move forward. So that was a really good one for me. And there was two speakers from America, and they were talking about their children's museum. And I have to say, it challenged my thinking, because the image I saw on the screen was not like how I imagine a museum. So I had a moment where I had to pause and think, right, why am I not seeing a museum in the way that I'm seeing it on the screen? And that's important. When we go to activities like this, there's going to be times where we could go, well, that's not how we do it, but that's no good. We need to think about why is it done differently and what can we learn from that? So when I thought about it a bit more, it reminded me very much of the W5 Centre in Belfast, if you've been to that. And what I loved actually about this was it was for children, a museum purely for children under the age of 6. So really different experience. Again, something that I want to reflect on is that they talked about kindergarten ready. And we've all heard about school ready. That would be the term that we used. And it was interesting to think about how school systems are maybe even that entry, even that experience from the beginning. And someone else asked, you know, what age do children go to school where you are? And they were saying from 5 years old, and kindergarten ready is basically sounds like our nursery P1. So they're at that stage coming in. So again, for us with children starting that little bit younger, it was interesting to reflect on that a little bit more. So that's a summary of today. I wanted to share it online because I think it's important to just share with you this experience rather than me just being away for a week. And hopefully I'll get time to do it tomorrow. I'm going to go and have a little explore of Glasgow because I've got no idea where I am. I got in a taxi. Thank you very much, Playboard, for inviting me to come with you. But I don't know where I am. I'm going to go and have a wander, maybe get a bit of tea, and then come back and have a little go on the computer and see what everyone's been up to. I'll be back tomorrow.